Dust rose like a warning line on the horizon. Evelyn kicked free of her silk hem and ran. She ran from the White House, the church bell, the vows written by another man. The boots were borrowed and were too big. The horse was half broke and hot with fear. Behind her, shouts tangled with wedding music. Ahead, the flats opened, empty and bright. Wind scraped her cheeks. Thirst burned the roof of her mouth. She did not look back. By noon, the sun was a hammer. The horse stumbled and slowed. Evelyn slid down and led him by the reins. Her feet ached. The borrowed boots rubbed skin raw. She saw a thin line of cottonwoods in the distance and headed there, praying for water. She reached bare ground and no stream. Only a dry bend and cracked mud. She swayed with dizziness. The world tilted. The horse blew air and tossed its head. A shadow moved on the ridge, quiet and steady as a hawk. He came down without hurry, leading his own pony. A Lakota scout, young but not boyish, with eyes that noticed small things. He stopped at a respectful distance and lifted his water skin. "Drink," he said. "Small sips." Evelyn stared at the beads on his wrist, blue and white like chips of sky. She took the skin, drank, coughed, and drank again. The water tasted like life and dust. "I am Chaska," he said. "Your feet are hurt." "I had to leave," she said, voice thin. "I had to." He nodded once, like choice needed no apology. He crouched and looked at her heels without touching. "Wrap them," he said, and showed a strip of cloth folded neatly and narrow. "Like this. Tight but not cruel." Evelyn copied his hands. The pain eased a little. He poured a palm of water for the horse. He did not ask questions that felt like fences. "I can guide you," Chaska said. "There is a trading post 2 hours north, or my people's camp by sunset. Women there will help you. You choose." She looked at the empty flats and the hard sky. The word post felt like a door that shut. The word camp felt like a gate held open. Cloud smudges crawled along the rim. "Camp," she said. He tied a short rope between their saddles. "Wind turned strange today," he said. "We will ride together." The rope between them was not a chain. They rode at a steady walk, ponies shoulder to shoulder, the short line easy between saddles. Chaska kept his eyes moving over land and sky. He pointed with his chin, showing signs. Evelyn watched, trying to keep her breath even. "See the grass lie one way?" he said. "Wind walking from the west. Dust builds there first." She looked and saw it, the faint lean, the shimmer toward the horizon. The air tasted dry, like a room with the stove left open. Her tongue felt thick. She tucked that knowledge into her pocket the way she once tucked a ribbon. They stopped at a low swale where willow roots had found a little water under the crust. Chaska knelt and pressed his palm to the earth. He dug a shallow cup and waited. Brown damp rose, enough to wet a cloth. He handed her another strip. "Wrap higher," he said. "Blisters travel." She smiled at that. Like gossip, his mouth tugged, a smile. Like that. They walked the horses to rest them. He showed her how to loosen the cinch a finger's width, how to shift the saddle blanket so sweat lines did not rub sores. He moved carefully, always speaking before reaching toward her mouth, always giving space after. Respect felt strange and good, like shade in noon heat. "Do you fear the post?" he asked. "I fear being given back," she said, like a kettle that did not suit. "You are not goods," he said. He spoke it plain, not as flattery, but as fact. Far off, a line of crows turned and turned in the same place. Chaska watched them for a long breath. "Dead thing there. We ride wide." They angled south and found the old wagon track he wanted. Sage brushed their boots. A jackrabbit sprang and ran like a thrown hat. The sun slid a hand toward afternoon. The breeze grew fickle, shifting, carrying the taste of grit. "When wind plays tricks," he said, "tie kindness between you and the person you guard. Rope is one kind." She looked at the line joining them. "And the other kind?" "Choice," he said. "You tell me if you wish to stop. You tell me if you do not want my aid." "I wish to go on," she said. "And I want your aid," he nodded. "Good, then we ride." The camp watched before it spoke. They rode in as the sun lowered, light turning the grass to brass. Low lodges made a circle with a gap to the riverbed. Smoke rose thin and straight. Children paused their games. Dogs trotted, sniffing the wind and the stranger's sweat. Chaska lifted his hand. No one rushed. The quiet felt like a gate that would not swing yet. An older woman stepped forward with 2 others beside her. Beads marked her age more than lines, blues, and earth reds. She looked at Evelyn's boots, the raw heel, the rope between saddles. She looked at Chaska last. "Hunka," she said to him, honoring kin. You bring the weather and a guest. Both may pass, Chaska said gently. She asked for women's shelter. The woman nodded once. She spoke to Evelyn, slow and plain. I am Winyan Bluebird. You are hurt and dry. We will help. If you stay, you work. If you leave, you travel with watchers until the trail is safe. No man here owns your steps. Do you understand? I do, Evelyn said. The words steadied her knees more than water. A girl carried a bowl and clean cloths. Another brought a kettle. They led Evelyn to a shade beside a lodge and set her on a folded robe. Winyan Bluebird unwrapped the heel and made a small approving sound at the neat bandage. Good hands, she said, glancing at Chaska without praise and then away. We will add salve. Evelyn told them her name. She did not tell her old last name. The women did not press. One cut a slice of dried meat. Another gave her tea that smelled like mint and earth. Between sips, they asked the useful questions. Could she sew? Cook, ride steady? Keep a child calm? Evelyn answered honestly. Yes, 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 and often. From the camp edge, a trader's wife who lived near the post brought news. Marshal Pike asked if any strangers were seen. She told Winyan Bluebird. Men ride the flats with dust behind. We grant sanctuary, Winyan Bluebird said, loud enough for the circle to hear. Our law stands inside our circle. Our guest will sleep among us tonight. Chaska tied his pony and stood back. Respect held him at the border of women's work. Evelyn felt the circle's quiet close around her like a held breath that belonged to her too. At last, truly, work came before comfort. At dawn, the women brought simple tasks. Evelyn learned to grind dry corn with a smooth stone. The work burned her shoulders, but the rhythm steadied her. Winyan Bluebird watched and nodded. Even circles, she said. You listen with your hands. Chaska kept away from the women's circle, but he passed by with 2 ponies and a coil of rawhide. He did not stop. He tipped his hand and went to mend a bridle. Evelyn kept her eyes on the corn. Respect was a rule here, and she liked it. By mid-morning, a boy ran in with a crying child on his back. The little one burned with fever. The mothers moved quickly. Evelyn asked for permission with her eyes. I learned tea for heat from my Aunt Liza, she said. Will you allow me to help? Show, Winyan Bluebird said. Evelyn washed her hands, crushed willow bark, and mixed a cool tea. She dipped a cloth and laid it over the child's wrists and neck. She spoke softly about rivers and shade. The crying eased. The child slept. No one cheered. They simply breathed out and moved on. Work first. Thanks later. After Evelyn's feet needed tending, a girl named Madoska showed her how to cut thin strips from soft buckskin and lace them around the heels. Wrap as you would promise, the girl said. Firm, not harsh. Evelyn smiled at the phrase. She tried and tried again until the wrap held smoothly. They ate the first warm meal at noon. A stew of beans, squash, and a hint of bison. Steam rose in the cool shade. Bowls passed hand to hand with easy jokes. Evelyn waited, unsure where to sit. Winyan Bluebird made space and set a bowl in her palms. No eyes weighed her. No man counted her bites. The relief was a second taste. Chaska came last with dust on his sleeves. He sat outside the circle as custom asked and ate quietly. When his eyes met hers, he looked away first. Giving safety she did not know she needed. She ate until her hands stopped shaking. In the afternoon, Chaska taught a small lesson at the camp's edge. He showed how to read wind by smoke. A straight rise means calm. A lean means trouble. Skill is kindness, he said. It keeps fear small. Evelyn watched the smoke and learned to name its tilt. Small moments stitched the day together. Evelyn helped fetch water from a seep, carrying it in a clay jar hugged to her chest. Madoska showed her how to step on the crust without breaking it, how to move heel to toe so the ground did not drink the spill. They laughed when a dog decided to escort them as if guarding a wagon train. After chores, an auntie set a beading tray in Evelyn's lap. Try, the woman said, eyes kind but firm. Evelyn's fingers were clumsy. Beads skittered like peas across a table. She tried to make a straight line and kept drawing a river. A girl giggled, then caught herself. Evelyn grinned first. It's all right. Rivers reach home too. The girl exhaled and showed her a trick. Use a longer needle, take 3 beads at once, and anchor each run with a tiny tug. The next line held better. Not pretty, not yet, but honest. Near the horses, Chaska rasped a stick, shaping it smooth. He checked the pony's hooves and trimmed a chip. When Evelyn walked by to bring him a strip of rawhide, he pointed to her ankle. Splint rubs? He asked. A little, she said. He crouched and adjusted the wrap, careful to say what he would do before his hands moved. Then he rose and stepped back paces, leaving air and trust between them. Better? Yes. He turned the smoothed stick in his palm. A narrow notch ran along one side. For you, he said. Wind reader, hold it up. When the notch hums, gusts are near, she tested it. A faint whistle kissed her ear. She laughed, surprised. A toy that tells the truth. A tool, he said, but his eyes warmed. Afternoon shadows grew long. The feverish child woke cooler and asked for a story. Evelyn told one about Aunt Liza, teaching her to braid grass ropes that never held a cow but always held a smile. The mothers listened while they mended. The circle felt easy, like a bench worn smooth by use. Toward evening, a rider passed far off on the ridge, dust trailing thin. The trader's wife by her wagon watched and frowned. Pike sent his questions again, she murmured. Men count hoofprints. Winyan Bluebird lifted her chin. Our guest works. Our guest eats. The circle stands, Evelyn breathed out. Work, then a laugh. This was how a person steadied. Trust was built in small pieces. At dusk, the women sang as they worked. It was not a church song. It was a work song with breaths like oars on a river. Evelyn hummed along when she caught the pattern. A child pressed a bead into her palm, a red one with a tiny chip. Lucky, the child whispered. Evelyn kept it warm in her fist. Chaska passed by carrying willow poles. He paused at the edge of the women's space and set down a small bundle wrapped in buckskin. For the sore feet, he said, voice low so it would not cross customs. Inside lay thin pads stitched with soft fur. Wear them inside your boots until the skin forgives you. Evelyn thanked him without big words. She slipped the pads into place and felt mercy under each step. Chaska lifted the bundle cord he had used and handed it to the boy who trailed him. A lesson. Give twice when you can. Near the fire, an auntie told a joke about a rooster who bragged so loudly he scared his own eggs from hatching. Laughter rolled like a small wave and then vanished back into work. No speeches, only warmth. Later, the trader's wife brought a scrap of newspaper to wrap dry herbs. Evelyn read a line out loud for anyone who cared to listen. The news talked about a banker who sold the same claim twice. Madoska snorted. Some men sell shadows, she said. They never touch the ground. The aunties nodded as if that explained a year. Winyan Bluebird checked Evelyn's needlework and tapped a finger on the crooked line. Make your mistake a pattern, she advised. Then it belongs. Together they turned the bend into a crossing, two paths that met and parted and met again. Evelyn smiled at the shape. It looked like a choice braided with chance. Night pulled its dark blanket. Stars burned without smoke. Chaska stood guard with two others where the circle opened to the flats. He spoke only once when a coyote yipped close. We are seen, he said, calm. We will be ready. Evelyn lay on her robe and listened to the hush between the ember cracks. The red bead rested under her thumb. She thought of the word home and did not push it away. The wind turned a little as if testing doors that were not there. Wind can blow faster than the night. Chaska woke the camp early and asked for a small space at the edge on even ground. He set two stakes 6 paces apart and tied a rope between them, shoulder high. Evelyn stood with her boots padded. Her hair was braided. The others watched, half an eye on the lesson. This is blind lead, Chaska said. Storm turns the world to smoke. Hands must think for eyes. He folded a short rope and looped it around Evelyn's wrist so it would pull without biting. He did the same to his own wrist, then left a line between them. Rule 1, he said. Say what you plan before you move. I will step, she said, and took a pace. The rope gave, then settled. Rule 2, he said. Keep the line low and quiet. No jerks. She lowered her arm and felt the ropes whisper how it carried calm. He moved left. She felt the angle. He moved right. She felt it change back. They practiced until her shoulders forgot to flinch. He tied a cloth over her eyes. She laughed. Then the dark pressed close. Dust reached her tongue. She breathed and put her palm to the guide rope. Chaska tapped twice on the line. Go, he said. Evelyn slid her hand along step by step, feeling knots he had placed like mile markers. Once she drifted and the tug on her wrist reminded her where safety waited. She corrected and went on. A gust took the fire smoke and laid it flat. The camp stilled. Chaska lifted his chin to the west. Good practice, he said. The land will test us soon. He took off the blindfold. Rule 3, he said. When fear climbs your back, speak one true line. What line? She asked. Your own. He set a coil of rope in her hands. Try leading me. Evelyn swallowed. I lead, she said. I step. She guided him to the second stake, turned, and brought him back without snapping the line. Breathless, she smiled. He nodded like a craftsman seeing a clean cut. Then he gave the vow he used for guarding. My strength is a wall, not a cage, and he said, If you do not want my help, say so. If you want it, I stand. I want it, she said, and the rope between them felt light as faith. Quiet words travel farther than shouts. They sat by the low fire after chores. Stars pricked the sky like awls. Smoke rose straight for a little while and then leaned, testing the dark. Around them the camp settled. A baby sighed. A horse shook its mane and the rope halter clicked. Chaska checked the coals with a stick. Tomorrow we speak before many, he said. Not yet a council, but faces will turn. Traders, freighters, wives. They listen when news smells like trouble. Evelyn held her cup with both hands. Mint steam touched her face. They will say I was taken. What will you say? That I left, he nodded. Plain answers travel well. Silence sat with them like an uncle who did not waste words. After a while, Evelyn spoke again. Men in my town said duty was love, but duty felt like a door that locked behind me. Chaska's eyes did not press. Some men use big words to hide small hearts. She smiled a little. Marshal Pike warned me once. He said Brant buys friends with debt and fear. Debt is a rope, Chaska said. It pulls both ways. A greedy man ties himself to the end of it. The fire clicked. A coal broke and slid. What do you fear? Evelyn asked, he thought. I fear speaking for another person as if their mouth were mine. She breathed out, surprised. That is a rare fear. It is a rule for me, he said. When I was younger, I failed it and learned. She waited. He gave only a piece. I told a cousin to ride a line I had not tested. The ice was thin. He went in. We pulled him out, but the cold stayed in his lungs all winter. I do not tell others where to step now unless I also step. Evelyn's voice dropped. Thank you for stepping with me. He tipped his head as if to say, we share risk. That is all. Wind brushed the grass, a soft hand. Chaska watched the smoke lean. One line to remember, he said. Law is a tool. Hands decide how it is used. Evelyn turned the red bead in her pocket and found her own line. Choice makes a home, not walls. They sat with those two lines until the coals went quiet. Far off, a coyote called. The night kept its promise close. The truth needed witnesses. They walked to the open ground near the traders' wagons where news liked to sit and be heard. Lodges stood behind them like quiet hills. Travelers gathered without being asked, freighters with gloves, wives with baskets, a clerk with ink on his thumb. The postmaster leaned in his doorway, stiff as a yardstick. Winyan Bluebird raised her hand. The talking slowed to a hush. We speak plain, she said. This woman came to our circle hurt and thirsty. She asked for shelter. In many years we will hear her say her wish. Evelyn felt the ground steady her boots. She saw Chaska standing at the boundary, eyes soft, held back by custom. She took one breath and another. The wind tugged her braid like a friend. I left my wedding, she said. I was not taken. I choose to stay under these women's care. Murmurs rolled and broke. The clerk squinted as if her words were numbers that did not add up. One freighter nodded. Choice, and he said, as if tasting the shape. The postmaster cleared his throat. Marshal Pike says a bride was stolen. Evelyn kept her voice level. Marshal Pike can ride here and ask me himself. I will answer him. I am not a sack of flour. I walk where I choose, Winyan Bluebird spoke so all could hear. Our law. A woman who asks sanctuary receives it. No man here speaks over her mouth. Inside our circle she is safe. A trader's wife lifted her chin. That is good law. Chaska did not smile, but relief loosened his shoulders. He spoke only one line for the record. I guided her because she asked. I claim no right. From the ridge, a rider turned his horse and cantered east. Dust showed his trail like a sentence underlined. The clerk watched him go and licked his thumb, uneasy. Winyan Bluebird touched Evelyn's wrist, a brief blessing. Work waits, she said. Safety grows when hands are busy. They returned to camp with the day still bright. Yet something had shifted. The choice was not a secret now. It had weight. It would travel faster than hooves. That evening, Chaska checked the sky and found the west blurred like glass breathed on. Storm signs, he said, and men will come with them. Evelyn looked toward the flats and did not bend. Let them come. My answer is ready. Boots and badges carry their own kind of weather. By mid-afternoon, a thin column of dust drew a straight line from the east. Riders formed out of it like stones when the creek water drops. Marshal Pike rode in front, jaw set. Beside him came Silas Brant in a coat that tried to look honest. 4 men followed, hats low, hands near guns they feared to draw. Winion Bluebird stepped to the circle's gap. She did not lift her chin. She did not lower it. Evelyn stood 2 paces back with the women, feet steady in fur-padded boots. Chaska waited beyond where men dealt with men, eyes on the riders' hands, not their mouths. Pike took off his hat as if he meant peace and spoke like a ledger. We're here to recover a stolen bride. No theft, Winion Bluebird said. A guest with sanctuary. Brant's mouth bent. Evelyn, he called, using her name like a leash. You've been misled. Come home. I'll forgive your panic, Evelyn answered so all could hear. I left. I'm not a horse to be led by a bit. A murmur ran through the riders. Pike's eyes flicked to the women, then to the trader's porch where the postmaster stood stiff as a rule. Our law says, Pike began. Law without choice is a chain, Winion Bluebird said. Inside this circle our rule stands. Outside it you may ask her with respect. Brant leaned in his saddle, heat under his polished tone. You shelter a thief's woman. That makes you part of the theft. Chaska spoke for the first time, voice even. Careful where you throw words. They fall back heavy. Pike lifted a palm. We give notice, he said. At dawn we return. If she hasn't come out, we'll take her as recovered property under territorial custom. Silence answered him, thick as rawhide. Dogs bristled but did not bark. A wind ran along the ground carrying tiny stings of grit. Winion Bluebird said, Dawn is a long way. We will use it. Pike nodded once, testing a nail. Dawn, he repeated. He turned his horse. Brant stared a beat longer, eyes hard and bright. Then the riders pulled away, dust trailing like a fuse. When they were small on the ridge, Chaska exhaled. We make ready, he said. Rope, water, eyes, Evelyn tightened her braid. And courage, she said. We will bring that too. The horizon went wrong. By late afternoon, the west turned the color of baked clay. A low growl rode the wind. Dust lifted from every hoofmark and did not settle. Smoke from the cook fire lay flat like a blanket pressed by a giant hand. Chaska moved camp like a quiet river. Waterskins filled first. Ropes checked next. He showed the older boys how to knot a line between the stoutest lodges. Women pulled in drying racks and tied lids on baskets. No one shouted. The steady orders beat louder than fear. Evelyn packed simply. Salve, cloth, the red bead, and a strip of willow bark. She tied her hair under a scarf. Winion Bluebird passed her a wet cloth for her mouth. Breathe through this when the air turns to knives, she said. The trader's wife brought news in 3 quick lines. Pike waits east. Brant grows mean. Soldiers sit at the fort counting reasons. Then she set her own wagon tight to the lee of a lodge and tied down every plate, as if each were a promise. Chaska walked the circle and touched each anchor point. When I say go, take the blind line, he said. Hands think for eyes. Speak your true line when fear climbs, Evelyn repeated her line under her breath. Choice makes a home, not walls. The words fit her teeth. They steadied her tongue. A boy stumbled near the horse corral, eyes wide at the sky. Evelyn caught his elbow. With me, she said. She led him to his mother and tied a soft rope from child to belt, a kindness line. The mother squeezed her hand once. Good thinking. The wind rose like a door unlatched. Sand ticked against leather and skin. The air smelled hot like iron left in a fire. Chaska handed Evelyn the short wrist rope and looped the twin on his own arm. He tapped twice. We ride the ridge trail if they strike in the storm, he said. Stay low to the pony's neck. Trust the line, she nodded. Her breath fogged the damp cloth. The world narrowed to rope, pony, the space of a palm. Far off, buffalo moved like dark boats against a red sea. They bunched and turned, bothered by the same wind. Chaska's eyes narrowed. They will look for lower ground. Then the sky dropped to earth and began to run. Sand took the world in one bite. The wind roared low, then high, a train without rails. Daylight turned the color of rust. The front edge hit camp and flattened breath. Dogs vanished into the red. People became shadows with ropes between them. Clothe up, Chaska called, voice small in the noise. He tapped twice on their wrist line. Evelyn pressed the wet cloth to her mouth and bent low to her pony's neck. Grit found every seam. Her eyes watered under the scarf. They moved because that was the rule. Hands on guide ropes, knots like milestones. The main line held from lodge to lodge, humming. Women passed children down that line, arm to arm. Evelyn kept one hand on her wrist rope and one on knots, counting like beads. A shout tore sideways. Men came with the storm, dark shapes slipping between tents, the posse using the blind wind like a cloak. Someone grabbed at Evelyn's sleeve. The yank spun her. She felt the wrist line pull solid and held. Chaska's answering tug steadied her feet. "Stay with me," he said to her ear, and then he was gone into the grit. Cutting a path toward the ridge trail, a small form broke from the line. A child. Eyes round white in a sand mask, frozen mid-run. The mother's cry drowned in the wind. Evelyn dropped to her knees and slid. She reached the child and wrapped her own scarf around the little face. "Hold here," she said, making the child's fingers feel the knot. We walked the rope home. She put the child's hand on the guideline, her own hand over it, and they moved inch by inch. Twice the storm pushed them off. Twice she found the rope again by memory of its hum. The child's breath hitched, then matched Evelyn's count. 4 slow in, 4 slow out. A man lunged from the red, hand closing on Evelyn's arm. "Marshal's orders," he barked, dragging. She twisted, keeping her body between him and the child. The wristline snapped tight. Chaska hit the man like a post hits a runaway gate. No gun, only force turned clean. The man folded, lost in dust. "Ridge now," Chaska said. He set the child on his saddle and looped the lead to Evelyn's hand. "Hand over hand. Don't run. Trust the knots." They stepped into the storm's open mouth and climbed as one. Thunder had hooves today. The ridge felt narrow as a rail. Rope hummed in their hands. Chaska's pony climbed steadily, ears flat in the wind. Evelyn kept the child tucked small, one arm round the waist, the other working knots, palm by palm. Grit beat their backs like thrown rice turned cruel. The sound rose from the red below. Low first, then a stamp, then thunder that touched bone. Buffalo many, pushed by the dust. She could not see them, but the ground spoke under her boots. The herd poured to lower ground, every hollow a riverbed for hooves. "Stay to stone," Chaska shouted. "Stone does not slide." He angled them along the ribs of the ridge where rock showed. The rope between their wrists kept talk short and sure. 2 tugs, stop. 1 tug, go. A long pull, drop lower and hold. Behind, men yelled, high with fear. A wagon cracked somewhere unseen. Another voice cursed God and rope alike. The storm took half the words and fed them to the herd. Evelyn tasted iron and kept counting knots. A shape burst from the red below. Brant's fancy wagon lunging blind, mules wild-eyed. It slewed into a wash and hung. The herd hit the wagon like water takes a loose board. Wood jumped and flew. The harness ripped. The driver vanished under brown muscle and dust. Brant's hat wheeled away, a black leaf with no tree. Chaska's pony stumbled. The knee struck a hidden rock and dropped him to the side. Chaska pulled the child close and took the fall on his shoulder. For a breath, he was pinned between horse and stone. Evelyn felt the yank through the rope like a cry in bone. "I'm here," she said. She planted her feet and leaned back with all she had. The knotlines burned, then held. The pony scrambled, found a shelf, and rose, shaking. Chaska rolled free, teeth clenched but eyes clear. They moved again, small steps, each one a choice. The herd ran below, a dark river in a red world, splitting around the broken wagon. Somewhere east, Marshal Pike's men fired twice, then stopped, helpless as stones at the weather. Evelyn breathed and kept moving. The wind began to tire. Grit fell in slower sheets. Above them, the sky showed a torn edge of blue. "Almost," Chaska said, breath thin but even. "Hold to the rope." "Stone, then sky." The wind lay down like a tired beast. They stood on the ridge, gray with dust and sweat. The child clung to Chaska's neck and hiccuped small sobs. Evelyn wiped grit from her eyes with the edge of her scarf. Below, the world came back in pieces. Lodges upright, the river bend pale. The storm walking away on heavy feet. Chaska checked the pony's knee and shoulder. He pressed, waited, and nodded. Sore, not broken. He looked at Evelyn's rope-burned hands. "You held good." "I learned from a careful teacher," she said, voice rough. Down on the flats, riders gathered like lost nails. Marshal Pike sat his horse, hat in his lap, face sand-scoured into worry. He raised a hand in a slow circle. Pull back, count heads, quit the chase. 2 men obeyed at once. A third stared at the broken wagon and turned pale. Brant clawed up from a drift near the wash, coat torn, hair white with dust. He saw Evelyn on the ridge and showed his teeth like a cornered dog. "This isn't finished," he shouted, voice thin in the fading wind. "I will bring soldiers, paper, chains with stamps." Pike did not echo him. He put his hat on and spoke to the remaining men. Whatever he said was quiet. They began to ride east in a slow file, heads bowed to the ground as if the earth held the truth worth hearing. Chaska watched until the last dust thread thinned. Then he touched the child's shoulder. "Brave one," he said. "Tell your mother you held the rope like a trail marker. They picked their way down the safer side." At the camp edge, hands reached, steady and sure. The child was taken into the arms that trembled after the embrace was done. A kettle steamed. Someone pressed a sweet root into Evelyn's palm. It tasted like rain after iron. Winyan Bluebird counted people, then ponies, then baskets. She nodded once, grief and gladness balanced in her eyes. "We lost a rack," she said. "We kept each other." Evelyn helped wash cuts with cool tea and bind small scrapes. Chaska set shoulders right and reset 2 bent stakes. No boasting, only work. At sunset, the sky turned clean brass. Evelyn stood with Chaska at the circle's gap. "He will return," she said. Chaska nodded. "So will we," he answered. To the truth in public, where paper must listen. Ash settles slower than fear. Night came clean and cool after the storm. The camp moved like a bruise easing. Fires were small, talk smaller. Evelyn washed grit from her hair with a cup, and a laugh sounded odd in her ears. The red bead lay in her palm. She pressed it into a new place on her beadwork at the crossing of 2 paths. The pattern held now. Choice meeting chance. Chaska brought a coil of rope cut from a line that had saved them. He set it on a mat between them, not closer. "Storm rope," he said. "Good strand. We should make it carry a gentler job." "What job?" she asked. "Rhines," he said. "For calm days. We will braid them flat so they do not burn the hand." They worked side by side, hands busy, words light. He showed a 3-strand plait, then stepped back and watched her take the lead. Her fingers remembered the rhythm. The rope changed shape under the patient's pulls. Storm turned into a guide. Winyan Bluebird stopped by and set down 2 biscuits. "Eat and then sleep," she said. "Tomorrow the post hears truth with both ears." She touched the new pattern on Evelyn's beadwork and gave one nod. "Good. A crooked start can finish straight." Evelyn looked toward the dark flats. "Brant will bring soldiers," she said. "Paper soldiers," Chaska answered. "They move when ink tells them to. We will speak before the ink dries." He checked her hands for fresh burns only by sight. "How is the skin?" "Better," she said. The fur pads were mercy. "Mercy is a tool," he said. "We use it like a rope." After food, a small gathering formed. No speeches. Each person named one thing they were thankful for after the storm. "A child's breath," said a mother. "A pony's sure foot," said a boy. "A lodge that did not wander," said an auntie. Evelyn's turn came. She looked at Chaska and then at the circle. "A line between people that does not choke," she said. Later, by the quiet horse line, she spoke low. "I do not wish to hide. Will you stand with me at the post?" "I will stand," he said, plain. "I do not own your choice." I protect its path. They finished the flat braid and tied the ends neatly. It lay across her knees like a promise she could hold. Morning did not ask permission. They rode at first light toward the trading post, 4 women, 2 men, and a boy. Evelyn wore the flat braid as reins on the borrowed horse. The red bead shone at the crossing on her work. Chaska kept a respectful space and watched the land. Clouds lay like thin boards across the blue. Dust slept. Wind only tested the grass. At the post, faces waited. Teamsters leaned on wheels. A clerk capped his ink. The postmaster stood behind the rail. Marshal Pike had arrived ahead of them, hat off, grit still in the brim. Beside him stood a young lieutenant with 4 soldiers, uniforms dulled by the storm. Brant had washed but not softened. He held a packet tied with a blue ribbon, paper teeth ready to bite. Winyan Bluebird raised her hand. "We speak where law has ears," she said. "No grabbing, no shouting. Words only." The lieutenant nodded. "My orders say the postmaster keeps the record," he said. "I am here to keep peace, not to carry anyone by force unless the law is plain." Brant stepped forward with a smile that held knives. "This woman is my promise," he said. She ran in a panic. "I claim recovery under custom." He lifted the ribboned papers. "Notes, contracts, church list, proof." Evelyn did not step back. My feet are mine, she said. I left by choice. She looked at Pike. You asked for truth. Here it is. The postmaster cleared his throat like a door hinge. I will write only one thing that matters, he said. Do you consent to return? Evelyn answered so the ink could not pretend later. No, I do not consent. I choose my own path. I choose sanctuary with these people. I choose to stand with Chaska as family by choice. A ripple ran through the gathered crowd. Pike pressed his lips, then gave one small nod as if a weight he knew finally had a name. The lieutenant turned to Brant. The law you ask for needs her, yes, he said. You don't have it. Brant's hand shook on the blue ribbon. He tore the knot loose and waved papers like a torch. Debts, he shouted. Her aunt owes me. Her house, her mule, the cloth on her back. She returns or I am ruined. Debt is a rope, Chaska said, voice even. Today it reaches only you. Paper can lie. Land remembers. Brant shook the papers like a rattler. Debts, he cried. She runs because she fears her ledger. Evelyn steadied her breath. Show them the ledger, she said to the clerk. Not his ribbon. The book. The clerk looked to Pike, then to the postmaster. The postmaster nodded once, a man taking down a musket he seldom used. The clerk fetched the big book with rawhide ties. Pages smelled of dust and ink. Names lived there in lines that did not change when men shouted. The trader's wife stepped forward, palms open. I wrote the marks last winter, she said. Brant's cousin brought notes with the same number twice. I told him no. He said the number does not matter if fear is loud. Murmurs rolled. The lieutenant lifted an eyebrow. Twice-numbered notes are not proof, he said. They are bait, Pike spoke, voice level. Brant, your claim stands only if the woman's consent is clear and if the papers are clean. He touched the ledger. These are not clean, Brant's smile cracked. I kept her aunt from hunger. I gave credit when others shut their doors. You priced hunger, Evelyn said quietly. You added weather to the bill. You tied ropes to throats and called it kindness. Chaska's hand stayed still at his sides. Law's a tool, he said, but greed swings it like a club. The clerk found the page. Aunt Liza's name, he read. 2 bolts of muslin, a sack of flour, and he frowned. A wedding saddle charged before it was ordered. The trader's wife nodded. He wrote that after the runaway. A charge to make a chain out of thin air. The postmaster set his palm on the book. I won't certify recovery, he said. No consent. No clean claim. The record will show she stays by choice. Brant's face went red. He looked around for a friend and found only dust. The soldiers did not move. The freighters studied their boots. Evelyn raised the flat braid in her hand. This came from the storm rope, she said. It saved us because it was honest. It pulls where you tell it. Your papers pull where you lie. A line of shame crossed Pike's face. He faced the crowd. If any man tries to take her, he breaks the peace. I will act. Brant's jaw jumped. His eyes slid toward his coat where steel slept. A bad hand twitches before a word. Brant moved first. His coat flared. His fingers found the grip. Steel flashed, hungry and small. The crowd sucked in one breath. Pike's hand went wide to warn. The young lieutenant shifted his weight. Calm as a door that will close if it must. Chaska was closer. He stepped inside the drawer before it finished. No punch, no shout. He turned Brant's wrist with a clean half circle, the kind a rope makes when you guide, not jerk. The pistol kissed dust and lay still. Chaska put his palm to Brant's shoulder and set him to his knees without harm. Enough, Pike said, voice iron. He signaled a soldier. The young lieutenant towed the pistol away and planted his boots between it and anger. Brant shook, then broke. She ruins me, he hissed. You all will starve when I close my ledger. The sun still rises without your ink, the trader's wife said. We trade fair or not at all. Evelyn stood where all could see her and spoke steadily. I do not wish blood. I wish a record. I am not property. I choose my path. I choose sanctuary with these women. I choose to walk beside Chaska. The postmaster wrote each line, slow and careful. Said before witnesses, he murmured and tapped the page. Pike looked at Brant. You can ride out whole, he said, or ride out in irons for drawing on a peace crowd. Which law do you prefer today? Brant swallowed his heat, spat dust, and stood. He gathered what pride he could and none of the papers. The soldiers watched, hands quiet. He climbed onto a borrowed horse. This isn't the last word, he threw back. The last word belongs to truth, Winyan Bluebird replied. Silence settled, the kind that heals. A freighter cleared his throat. "Council's done," he said softly. People turned to work. Wheels creaked. Children exhaled. Chaska picked up the flat braid from where it had fallen and offered it back to Evelyn, not touching her fingers. She took it, smiling small. "Thank you for keeping the line gentle," she said. "I will keep doing that," he answered. The lieutenant faced the postmaster. "Our part here is finished," he said. "We leave with nothing to carry." "Carry this," the postmaster said, closing the ledger. A true entry. The day opened like a gate. For all, change arrived with simple work. Snowmelt traced silver lines in the draws. Grass showed green tips where the herd had churned the soil bare. At the camp, lodges stood truer than before. Stakes replaced, ropes checked, skins cleaned smooth with ash. Children ran the guideline like a game, hand over hand, laughing at the hum. The storm rope had become flat reins, stout and neat, the braid dark as wet willow. Evelyn rubbed oil into the leather and felt it drink. She moved through the day with purpose that fit. She ground corn in even circles, then stitched, then helped a mother mix willow tea for a teething baby. Winyan Bluebird watched without fuss and gave a trusted task. Measure stores for the next moon and mark what must be traded. The trader's wife met her with a steady look and a fair scale. "Flour for bead thread," the woman said. "A square deal, clean on both sides." They shook hands as equals. Marshal Pike rode by twice that week and did not dismount. He tipped his hat to the circle and kept to the road. Word drifted that he fined a man for drawing steel near the post. Brant's name fell quiet, like a bucket left where the well went dry. On Sundays, the freighters held a small sing at the post. No sermon, only voices. Evelyn stood at the edge and hummed, then returned to the circle where aunties mended and told of rivers that change beds yet find the sea. Chaska carved a small horse from cottonwood and gave it to the fever child, now bright-eyed and brave. They set a fence of willow around the seep, so hooves would not trample it. They raised a school tent from an old wagon sheet. Letters chalked on a plank shone white in the sun. A boy spelled rope, then hope, and the camp smiled at the rhyme. Wind came gentler, a hand smoothing hair instead of pulling it. Evelyn tested the sky each morning and named its signs. Water signs, not dust. Her feet healed pink and strong. The red bead at the crossing held shine. In the evening, under a bare cottonwood, she and Chaska stood with the reins between them. No one pressed. No clock ticked. The choice waited in the open air, simple as a path after rain. "Soon?" she asked. "Soon," he said. "When the grass is full." Spring does not ask who deserves it. They met under the cottonwood where the river bent like an elbow resting. New leaves shivered, small and brave. The seep ran clear behind a willow fence. Horses cropped fresh grass, tails switching easily. Camp sounds carried. Pans, a child's bright laugh, a song without words. Evelyn wore boots that fit her now. The red bead shone at the crossing on her beadwork. She held the flat braid they had made from storm rope, the leather oiled and ready. Chaska stood with calm shoulders and careful eyes, a small horse carved from cottonwood in one palm. Winyan Bluebird stepped near and spoke a simple line. "A vow is a tool," she said. "Use it to build, not to bind." She looked to Evelyn, then to Chaska. "Say what you choose," Evelyn faced him. "I stay," she said, steady. "I choose you, and I choose this circle. My steps are mine." "I walk beside you," Chaska answered plainly. "I stand," he said. "My strength is a wall, not a cage. Your voice is your own. I will keep the path clear when the wind comes." They traded small gifts. Evelyn gave the flat braid reins. Her crooked start turned straight by patience. Chaska tied a bracelet of horsehair around her wrist, soft as a promise that does not bruise. The camp watched without crowding. Winyan Bluebird lifted her hand in blessing and the breeze answered. Marshal Pike sat his horse on the far road and tipped his hat once, a witness who finally believed the ground more than paper. The postmaster wrote one last line in a neat hand. Evelyn, by her own word, joined her path with Chaska's under the cottonwood. They rode out a little way and back, a quiet circle that felt like opening instead of closing. Two sets of tracks braided on the pale grass and pointed toward the long country. Evelyn looked at the sky, clear as a washed plate. "Home," she said. Chaska smiled, the kind that starts in the eyes. "Where the horizon is wide," he said. The story became a small legend people told when dust rose, or when a rope hummed in the hand. How a woman was not a thing to claim. How a man's vow held space, how choice made a house out of open air. If you enjoyed this, please subscribe, like, and share.